And welcome back to State House today as we begin another session of the General Assembly. Each week we try to look at topics that are coming up, issues that are being raised, what the General Assembly is going to do, what they're not going to do, what are their positions on it. Of course, first of all, we want to welcome back our friends in the block building. We know they're tuned in for this season's chapters. And we also want to thank our sponsors, Time Warner Cable and the Columbia Metropolitan Airport, for making this broadcast possible. Also our producers, South Carolina Educational Television and the South Carolina Press Association. Today we're going to look at the start of the session. We'll first start with the Senate and take a look. What are the issues? What's coming up? What won't come up? Will it be contentious? Got new members in there. Does that change the flow of business? So we thought the best way to get started was get the leaders of the Democrat and Republican Party senators to come in and give us their perspective on it. I'll just start right here to my right, Senator Nikki Setzler, longtime veteran of the South Carolina Senate. He is the minority leader of the Senate. And right next to him, Senator Harvey from up there in the mountains in Cherokee County, and he is the head of the Republicans. He's the majority leader. Gentlemen, I'll just start with you, Senator Setzler. Session opens. Contentious session? Do you think it'll be a hard-working session, gridlock, or what? What do you see?
Well, first of all, I hope it is not gridlock, because I think people are tired of the gridlock that's in Washington, and they're looking for us. And Senator Peeler and I have this history of a bipartisan cooperation trying to move this state forward, and I think that's the way we go into the session. I think it'll be a hard-working session. I think we got a lot of major issues, from cybersecurity to early voting, to campaign reform. So I think there's a huge and numerous issues that we will be addressing this year.
Senator?
Absolutely, and thank you, and you're absolutely right, Senator. We have a personal friendship that goes back for over 30 years, and plus the tie that binds the senator from Lexington to me is education.
That's right.
We both have a goal of allowing our children the most potential that they could possibly achieve. That's our goal. Sometimes the way that we reach that goal is different, but our goal is to allow every child in South Carolina the opportunity to reach their maximum potential. That said, it's going to be difficult today not calling you Senator McConnell after calling you Senator McConnell for some 32 years. But so if I call you Senator, I hope you're not offended.
I'm not offended a bit.
Thank you. But I looked what we talked earlier before we went on there, how impressed we are with the new senators. We have 10 new senators, 7 on my side, 3 on your side, but we've been really impressed with them, hardworking senators. And I think you asked, do you think we're going to have gridlock? I hope not, because my constituents don't want it. They look at Washington, D.C., they say, please don't turn Columbia into another Washington, D.C.
That's correct.
And we're certainly not looking at that. I think we'll have a productive session. Some things my caucus are interested in: transportation funding, spending caps, the cyber security, the hacking situation for our economic development part, and then government reform, Department of Administration, and the ethics legislation, and then the ballot fix. I call it the filing fiasco of last year. So our plate's full. We've started early. I think the Judicial Committee has already voted out a couple of bills, the ballot bill, the ballot fix, and hopefully we'll get on that early. And then another issue that we'll be dealing with is the sweepstakes, and that
Correct.
came out. And so that
Closing that loophole.
That's right. And then along with that, and I know it's something you've talked about for years, Senator, is the raffle. Up our way, the Lions Club especially, they've had an annual raffle. That's how there's major funding. And so the great gambling debate, I think, is on the horizon.
On the horizon. Well, let me ask you, because one of the things, we've been out on the Face of Aging tour. Ladies, senior ladies make quilts down in Dorchester County. They can't go out and sell a raffle ticket to raise money for their senior center because of an antiquated law in this state. They'll be prosecuted, and the prosecution is worse than illegal gambling. You think we're going to finally get a change in the raffle laws in this state?
I hope so. The senator from Georgetown, Senator Cleary, is very active. He's gotten several co-sponsors. I'm a co-sponsor. And I think the the warring parties, I think, have come together on at least that bill,
Right.
and hopefully we'll get that out. But you're absolutely right. It needs to be addressed. It's that hypocrisy needle, I call it, though. We got the lottery, state-run lottery, and last time I checked, that's gambling.
Yeah.
And
Why should the state have a monopoly? Why can't the nonprofits?
I think it's an issue we got to settle. We got to settle early, and we clearly do not need to lock down the Senate in some filibuster or tie up procedurally for the rest of the year all the major things that we got to deal with in relation to the raffle. Raffle's important, but we need to be talking about jobs and education and how we move this state forward and infrastructure, the things that are going to move us forward as a state in the 21st century.
And
Well, then let's start then with transportation, since y'all asked about. There's a study out saying that we're billions of dollars behind with roads. We need new roads. We can't maintain what we got. Are we going to have a gas tax? Is it going to be paid out of the general fund? Do y'all see that getting up for debate this year, or is it just going to be kind of talked about?
Transportation funding is one of our agenda items, but getting back to the operation of the Senate, our rules changed. What we did at our organizational session, making it to where one senator couldn't object to the entire calendar. We've changed that to where one senator couldn't object to more than 3 bills on the calendar. I think that'll help the operation of the Senate also.
And move some of these things, Senator, forward.
And back to transportation funding, absolutely. That's amongst our top agenda. And I think that deals with economic development too and jobs, like you said, Senator. You've heard me talk about the disparity of the funding in the state. Infrastructure Bank, I'm introducing a bill today to fold the Infrastructure Bank into the Department of Transportation. I know the senator from Lexington may not like that because the structure of the Infrastructure Bank has changed a little bit, but I honestly think it's outlived its usefulness. It's obligated funds that they haven't had in the future years for a proposed road in your area, Lieutenant Governor McConnell. But I think it needs to have a statewide perspective. For me, it should be the governor. The governor is elected statewide. The buck should stop at the governor's desk. If we can't do that politically, we need to at least fold it into the DOT, that we have DOT commissioners from each congressional district. At least every area of the state will have a seat at the table. With the Infrastructure Bank, it's swayed, it's political, and there's no doubt about it. And I think it was Cousin Arthur that did that to get the Ravenel Bridge.
It's strange it wasn't political till somebody from the Midlands got put on there. Now it's become political. Really strange.
It's
Since
always
its existence, it's never been political. And nobody wanted to fold it in until we got appointee from Richland County and the Midlands, and now we have some influence in the Infrastructure Bank. But let's go back to infrastructure totally and the roads. And that is a huge issue that this state faces. And again, it ties in to economic development. It ties into jobs. It ties into education. I hope that during this session, those are the issues we are debating, and that we don't get lost in the weeds and get into gridlock and partisan fighting over minor issues compared to what the big issues are in this state that need to be addressed.
Well,
let's talk about the gas tax.
Right.
My caucus, we're not supporting any tax increase on fuel.
So where the revenues will come from if it's not a gas tax? Is there another tax or another revenue source you're looking at?
This is going to be a practical General Assembly, and I hope so, a practical Senate. We may have some people, I know we have some people in the Senate that want to raise the fuel tax. But in the real world, practical sense, the governor says she would veto it. There's no way in the world we have enough votes to override a veto, even if it did pass. So why not go back to something that we think we can pass? One, there's a bill, the $300 sales tax on cars. That money's going into the General Assembly now. That needs to be dedicated in the DOT for road repairs, for the repair, not for new construction, but for repairing our existing roads. Right. And you talked about the problems. That's where the problems are. I know you want 526, people on the coast want I-73, but that's new construction. And what we have now, 8526, it's crumbling. We can't get to the port. Leaving Columbia to try to get to the port, you going home tonight, 26 is a parking lot.
Doesn't 26 need to be 3 lanes all the way through the state now?
No doubt about it, and 85 does too.
Yeah, the interstates. Which brings me, I guess, to the thing, and you touched on it, and you touched on also, education. morning's paper, there's talk about teacher pay raises. It's going to take additional money to keep up the base student cost. Then on top of that, on higher education, the state has not had enough money to keep up with higher education. Tuition costs are going up. Education's getting more expensive for the people of South Carolina. Do you all see any initiatives in that area to try to tackle the cost of tuition in higher education and make sure we keep our education system competitive, since that's key to economic development?
Well, I think we have to make education a priority in this state. And whether people agree or disagree, funding is a part of that. And this concept that we're going to keep funding it where it was 4 years ago or 3 years ago, sooner or later has got to change for us to move forward. And secondly, you mentioned the article in the paper, which I have not seen, about teacher pay raises. Clearly, teachers need a pay raise. We have issues in some of the education areas of this state, but we have a lot of people that do a very good job, that are innovative, on cutting edge, are doing great things in the schools of this state. And we need to be positive about that and not always be attacking the education community and those people who are out there teaching our children on a daily basis. We've got a new program in this state called Teach America, which has been very, very successful. And I think there's some recommendations to increase the funding for Teach America. We got charter schools that we got virtual education now, which is a thing of the future. And that's how education is going to go. Tied to funding, though, is you can't keep doing it the same old way. You got to modernize. You got to get into the 21st century with your delivery system. Same thing with higher education.
Absolutely, and like I said earlier, our goal is to accomplish that. The way to get to that goal may be different. Homeschooling, charter schools, tax credits for private schools. That's that same debate that we have. But that's how we're trying to educate the children to get them more money into the classroom, not administration. But then there's different ways, more innovative ways to do that. And so I think we're looking more at cost savings and trying to spend the dollars that we have more wisely.
But go back. Again, my point is, if we're debating those issues, whether it's education, infrastructure, bank, then we're debating the right issues. We're dealing with the big issues about the future of this state and how
Well, I
you
want to throw
change
one
those
at both of you,
Okay.
because the largest growing segment in South Carolina is the senior population.
Okay.
We expect it to double over the next 20 years. The state doesn't have a strategic plan for it. The in-home and community-based programs have been cut 48% in this state. 8,000 people are sitting on waiting lists for meals a day, and this state has not reached out with a helping hand. That issue's coming forward. What do you think the General Assembly's going to do? Because I'm hearing we got to do something that's general fund from everywhere, from highways to education, and we got a growing segment of this public we cannot leave behind. And then on top of that, we got the debate about Medicaid funding that's going to, I think, come into the General Assembly. But first, from a home and community base, I would ask you, where do you think the General Assembly will be? It's almost 40 times cheaper to deal with it in the communities than it is to get in skilled nursing beds.
Well, I think, Lieutenant Governor, you have been very active since you've taken over the position of Lieutenant Governor of this state, and you can give us the guidance there, and we will work with you, because the seniors of this state are a tremendous asset to the people of South Carolina. They have the knowledge, the experience. They got us to where we are, and we owe them a great deal for what they've done for us, and we're not going to leave them behind. I don't think there's any
I
question.
don't know about two y'all, but I'm one now. I hit 65 this year.
Well,
Been there and done that.
Oh, okay.
well, the education community has a built-in constituency and a built-in advocacy group. The education community does. The elderly, until you became Lieutenant Governor, didn't have one. Now we do.
Right.
We have an advocate. And I've said earlier, I think the real money tug of war, the real budget tug of war, is going to be between expanding Medicaid and infrastructure funding. I think that's where the real battle is going to come. But getting back to the senator from Lexington, with your caucus, I hope they hear that from you, that let's not try to use the small issues to block the big issues.
Right.
That's something that I've seen in the past. I hope we don't get back into that posture.
I hope you're right.
And I think you will see that, Senator Peeler, but at the same time, and as you and I have discussed, that is when we set an agenda in cooperation with both caucuses and not one caucus driving the agenda, and we address the issues that both caucuses think are important. I think that's where we get in the problem is as long as we're coordinating what the issues are and how we're going to address them, I think we get there. Well, you and I have committed to each other, we're going to work hard to do that.
Let me tell you on one issue that comes up that affects all of these things. We've discovered it in the agent thing, and we discover it everywhere we go. And it's the growth of regulations in South Carolina. We got an invisible growth of government going on where regulations are spewing out of these agencies. The General Assembly doesn't vote up or down on them. They end up going into law, and then the bureaucrats are enforcing them. And the law in this state says that after 120 days they go in effect. Do y'all see the General Assembly having the appetite to take back that power from the executive branch and require any regulation to get an affirmative vote up or down before it can go in effect in South Carolina?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And in my committee, I chair the Medical Affairs Committee. A lot of regulations come through my committee. And I promise you, with my committee members, if there's a fee to a regulation, a red flag immediately goes up. And they've got to explain why that's in there, what's it going for. Sometimes people in the industry want that. It helps their industry. But sometimes, most times they don't. And that's the key.
And I agree with Senator Peeler. I think we do have the appetite to deal with that issue of the regulations. And involved in that, which he mentioned briefly, is the issue of fees. Because now for 10 years we've said we're not raising taxes, but what's been done is fees have been raised by agencies, and they've raised lots of money through fees in order for people to be able to say we didn't raise taxes. We got to address those issues of fees that are being passed on to people through the process of regulations as a part of approving regulations. That's our obligation.
Well, it's good to hear both of you, and I know both of you have been concerned about the growth of fees and no oversight.
Right.
But we have counted it out there. We just a new set of regs we saw, it's got a $1,000 fee in it, and that's coming to your committee. So I kind of hear where the future is there.
It's all about transparency.
Yes, sir. Which brings me next to concern out there. We've told seniors, nobody from the state's calling them, asking them for their Social Security number and information. But the DOR, security break, is the General Assembly. That's $20 million that's got to be found, apparently.
You know, from my perspective, and I think from our caucus's perspective, there is absolutely no question you got to deal with the cybersecurity issue. But I think it's broader than DOR. I think the state owes obligation to the citizens of this state to protect their information. You get it not only at DOR, you get it in higher education, you get it in wildlife and natural resources, you get it through the education system, you get all kind of information from taxpayers. We need to address that issue on a statewide, across the board agency process, not agency by agency, where we end up spending a whole lot more money than we should. We've got to coordinate cybersecurity for the citizens of this state. We owe them that, and I think that will be one of the 2 or 3 huge issues this session.
No doubt. Well, you look at the agenda, your caucus's agenda, mine, the House. I think several of those issues overlap. Several of your agenda items are my agenda items.
Right.
Or your group and our group. So yes, it's at the top. I personally feel, and I think everybody that I talk with, if government requires you, Senator McConnell, to release your information to the government, then it's the government's responsibility to protect it. That's it. And whatever the price tag is, that's what we'll have to pay. The balancing act is going to be, we just don't want it to turn to another Hugo or a Y2K. You know, every agent's coming in needing more money. Well, they use that as cybersecurity as a reason.
There's a reason to get their budgets up. I hear you, Senator.
So we just got to be cautious, and I've talked to the chairman about that, and he's cognizant of it. But we will be responsible, and it's on everyone's mind.
There's no question. I think you will see all 46 members of the Senate committed to dealing with that issue. I think the Finance Committee chairman is committed to dealing with that issue.
Well, the Senator from Anderson, Senator Bryant, and Senator from Abbeville, Senator Odell, co-chair a committee dealing with these issues.
Well, one of the issues I want to touch on, we're almost out of time, is the old issue of the Department of Administration. Is it coming back up again? Do you see that being a contentious debate? Where do you see that headed this year? Either of you?
Yes and yes.
Yes. It's coming up and it's going to be contentious.
Yes,
Is that?
and yes.
I would agree with that, yes and yes.
All right, and the contention, I guess, part of my concern has been that several years ago, HHS ran almost $250 million overspend. And then the Budget and Control Board went and approved the overspend and rolled it, and eventually General Assembly never voted on that. To stop the deficits in these agencies, do you think that'll be part of that Department of Administration bill?
I think it's a part of whatever we do, particularly through the budget process likewise, not just through the Department of Administration bill.
Right. Well, I think everyone agrees that the executive function should be handled by the governor. The legislative function should be handled by the legislature. That's the debate. That's the philosophical debate. And whether you like the Budget and Control Board or not, but Senator, I said yes and yes. I mean, Lieutenant Governor.
Oh, that's.
But yes, it will come up. It's a major issue that our caucus is supporting, but we anticipate pushback on it. But hopefully, the leadership and folks will get together and see if we can come out with some. We need to settle it. But we ended last year. A lot of good things went to the side because trying to get from to the Department of Administration, we need to settle it one way or the other, and I support it.
Well, it's not all about executive versus legislative. It's also about if you make the change, how it's structured and the makeup it is. And that's not a minor issue. That's a huge issue that has to be debated in the committees and on the floor of the Senate in order to resolve that issue. That's a part of the issue. It's not just executive versus legislative.
And it has bipartisan support.
It does. It does.
Several members of your caucus support it.
That's correct.
Let me ask you, both of you, we've only got about 5 minutes left. State employees got involved in an issue last year where the Budget Control Board reaches in, y'all funded the state employees' health insurance increases. The Budget Control Board turns around and says, no, we're not going to do that. Is that a separation of powers issue?
Yes.
Yes.
And I supported that, the state employees on that, and I do think that was not correct for the Budget Control Board to do that, and I think you'll see the Senate look at that issue.
And laying the cards on the table, pay raises for state employees, that's a toughie. So the health care plan for them, that's if we can give them something for their work. If we can't give them a pay raise,
exactly.
At least.
But the power, the Constitution is very clear to me, the power of appropriations with the General Assembly,
no
not
question.
the Budget Control Board.
No question.
I don't know why they think they have that power. And it was just one of those issues.
I don't think that issue is going away, Lieutenant Governor. I think the issue of what they did and protecting the state employees from the standpoint of the health care benefits that were given to them by the General Assembly spoke.
Let me very quickly, we're almost out of time. Ethics, y'all both said it was going to be some ethics debate. What do you see happening in that particular area very quickly?
I think just everyone have committees and commissions looking for it. Looking at it. I know Senator Hayes chairs the committee that our President Pro Tem, Senator Corson, appointed a group that they're looking at it. The governor has a commission, and I think they're waiting on the governor's group to hear their recommendations. They're working together, talking together, but yes, I think we'll see an ethics package.
And I think it's broader than just ethics. I think it's also campaign reform, and I think you're dealing with the issues of the filings and what occurred in the filings. I think you got a gigantic issue of out-of-state, huge sums of money coming into the state in campaigns that are undisclosed, unreported, and then you got leadership PACs. So I think all of that rolls into that whole debate.
It does, but sources of income, that's the main thing that people want in this thing. That's the source of it, not the amount, but the source of income, and the people just need to know that.
How about the argument that's been raised on the ethics, which to me is a valid constitutional argument, that you cannot have one branch of government sitting in judgment of the other branch on ethics. You can't have the legislature can't sit in judgment of the executive branch, but the executive branch can't sit in judgment of the legislature unless you change the Constitution. What do y'all think? You think that's going to be a...
I think that'd be part of the debate.
It will be. It's like the fellow said that said we need to hire a night watchman, and then the guy said, "Well, who are we going to get to watch the night watchman?" Yeah, that's it. But I don't want that argument to kill the ethics reform.
So you're telling me very quickly that it's everything from campaign financing to the filing laws to the disclosure to these
income sources,
C7s or whatever they call them that are out there spending money and not making disclosures. And I guess we're going to hear a whole round of debate on everything from constitutional law back to political, rhetorical speeches. So.
Absolutely.
Now ask us, do you think this is going to be an easy session?
Yeah, well, I'll ask Mary. It'll be an easy session to get all this done.
It'll be a work in progress.
Yeah. If we address the issues we're supposed to address and need to address, it will not be an easy session, but that's what we're supposed to do.
We got less than 1 minute on the broadcast. Anything you wish to tell the viewers that, to be on the lookout for?
No, we just thank you and appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and look forward to working with you on senior issues.
Well, I look forward to you and thank you both because I know you have an interest in that area.
Same here, and it boils down to jobs.
It's all about jobs.
Jobs, the economy, and where the country's headed.
Correct.
And with that, we're headed toward sign-off because we're out of time. So with that, we thank you for tuning in. We'll be back again with other issues here at the State House.
Broadcast of this program is made possible in part by Time Warner Cable, online at timewarnercable.com. And by the Columbia Metropolitan Airport, online at columbiaairport.com.